April 1st. 1993 in New York. Anybody who tries to teach a spiritual message in language is a fool. And I'm guilty. It's impossible to do that. Jesus couldn't, so he used parables. Well, it's like this. And then he gives him a story. When he says, if you had faith as large as a mustard seed, you could move mountains. Do you think he meant if you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you could move mountains? Of course not. When he talked about the shepherd laying his life down for the sheep, do you think he was talking about a shepherd laying his life down for the sheep? No. He was using metaphors that he took out of everyday life that the people he was talking to were familiar with. They were familiar images. And not to be taken literally. Joel uses lots of metaphor, although not so many as I do. My whole way of teaching is loaded with metaphor, loaded with images, loaded with similes, loaded with allegories. It is not to be taken literally. When I say God puts his foot on your neck, surely you don't think I mean God puts his foot on your neck. But some of you do, apparently. One did, and wrote me a letter. If God puts his foot on an individual's neck, then it would seem that he is operating in human affairs. This hypothesis, in effect, would be incorrect if the individual's level of awareness has been heightened, soul faculty opened, and he is consciously seeking God realization, then it is not a God activity, but rather the path set before us as we actively work towards coming into harmony with God's law. Who is we? Who is the we that is actively working to come into harmony with God's law? There isn't any we. In fact, there isn't any God. There's only I. But how does it really work? Gosh, I've even drawn you pictures. Joel didn't do that. To try to make it clear how it works. Are my pictures going to fall short? Yes. And not only because I'm a lousy drawer, but because there's no way on earth that I could put into language or picture what I'm really talking about. So if you want to take me literally, be my guest. And you'll be where the people who take the Bible literally are, who fight wars over the fact that they can prove by the Bible that the world was made as 4,735 days. Nah, let's be better and more open and wiser than that. and realize that if you're here at all, number one, it would be because you read a book. And number two, you'd have to believe that I had something to share. So don't be picky. If I don't say it exactly the way you would like me to say it, I'm sorry. You learn what you can from me, and then you go and say it better. And I'll stand by and applaud. But don't make it too hard on me to try to communicate. Because if you do, then I will communicate. And there won't be any words at all. We will sit in the silence for the rest of the week. And I will be communicating consciousness to consciousness. But you wouldn't be having as much fun. Okay? Now, what am I trying to get across with this picture? And with the way I've talked about God and its creation. And trying to get across, like I did along the Royal Road, the idea that infinite consciousness is constantly in the process of moving and manifesting itself in different forms, which it does by lowering its rate of vibration. It doesn't make a man. It lowers its rate of vibration and becomes I, and continues to lower its rate of vibration and becomes I, little I. Well, really not. That's not the way I like the picture. It becomes mind. And it's a lower rate of vibration. And that lowers its rate of vibration into becoming what we call the visible world. And it is visible, but only to our limited eyesight. It becomes visible to eyes that don't see very well, to ears that don't hear very well, not nearly so well as a dog or an eagle, respectively, but in the form that we call now man. Sometimes I've actually had the feeling that I can feel God moving itself from somewhere into my arms, and it hasn't quite reached my fingers, but it's moving. And that's really the way it happens, only of course none of that is true. What does happen is that it is quietly, slowly, inexorably continuing to manifest itself and moving as it does this, gradually awakening its lower manifestations, one of whom is man. The angels are higher. There is a parallel to this image, because I'm giving you an image. You know, we learn so much easier through images than we do through language. Because an image is an image is an image. And if I can transmit an image to your image maker, you really have it. Whereas if I use language, you might not even have the same meaning by the words I use that you have when you use them. And so that language is more obfuscating than it is clarifying, very likely. And that's why I like to use images. Now there's a parallel in the physiological world, for instance, that when a baby is born, the nervous system that goes from the brain to the urinary system is not complete. It isn't finished. And it doesn't, in fact, get finished until 3 years later. Only gradually. And that is the cause. That ignorance of that fact is the cause of an awful lot of stupidity of parents with children who try to potty train their children long before the signals from the bladder to the brain are finished. So they get conditioned by either shame or beatings or other salutary methods to trying to be forced to do something that nature has not yet prepared them to do. You see that? Now, in the same way, God is not finished with us yet. It has not yet fully manifested itself to our ultimate development. And we unfold like the acorn and the oak tree. And I don't know how many eons it may take before we have reached the end of God's breathing out. Because that's the explanation of infinity. There's no such thing. The expanding universe is only half the picture. If all of you have read Hoyle. Everybody read Hoyle? Expanding universe? Okay, well, he has the idea of the Big Bang, and that everything is now going outward, and that ultimately it will stop, which it would, indeed, because the energy of the force that set it out in the first place would finally wear down, and it would come to a stop. There goes the end of the world. It doesn't happen that way at all. God has a much better system. He breathes out, and then he breathes in. And that's infinity. Is right now we're in an out-breathing stage. And when we come to the in-breathing stage, it will go back into the black holes. And then it will come out again. And that goes on infinitely. Now, that's a hard picture, and it's not a good one, but it's the best one I have in my back pocket for the moment. So you'll have to accept it or not. Infinity is not spatial. It doesn't mean it goes out into a big space forever. It's an out-breathing and an in-breathing and an out-breathing and an in-breathing, and it has always breathed down and it's always breathed in and it's going to continue to do so. Clear? Okay. So that, excuse me? Yes?
You said we're at the outward.
We're going out.
Okay, when it's coming in, do we regress?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. You see, the fact is...
Question.
Go ahead.
What was the question?
Oh, the question was, if it's an out-breathing and an in-breathing, when we're going backward, are we regressing? No, because God is infinite. All that happened is that we'll be living a different drama. Have you ever read the Ramayana? Well, that's a story of that kind of thing. The great Edda of the Scandinavians, specifically the Norwegians, talks about the twilight of the gods. And it's always this beginning from a place of perfection and a gradual degradation, and then if you're with the swine and you start back into the great place again. But what's really happening? You're not going anyplace. It's the dream. You see that? God is immutable. You follow that? So that when the out-breathing and the in-breathing is taking place within an immutable, infinite source. Is that clear? It's not clear to me. Yes, it is. I'm kidding. So that all that happens is we have a different play to play, and there's the great play. And then there's lots of little plays in between. There are greater souls than the angels, and they're playing a different drama, etc., etc., etc. God is infinite, and he manifests himself in an infinite variety of forms. Why? For his fun. Because it is his nature to manifest. It is its nature to manifest itself. It cannot do otherwise. It must create. It must move. It must create. Is that clear? So that we're not finished. This is a movable thing. And with our limited intelligence, we keep trying to put God in a box. And he won't stay there. So if I use language like when God put his foot on my neck, what am I really telling you? What am I telling you? Yes?
It's a needle to be overcome. It's been put into a parallel path.
No, it's not a needle to be overcome. It's not a needle. You see, again, you're separating me from God. As if God is doing something to me, and that isn't what's taking place. You see, when I say that God's putting, here I am, in my reality, I am. Right? So who is doing all this? I am doing all this. There isn't any God. There isn't any God. God? never existed. Right? I am doing this.
Yeah.
So what happens is, in my unfolding myself, I went to sleep. Okay? And I'm waking up, and in my unfolding myself, I am having challenges. What is the purpose of waking up? It is for me to know I am. And right now, there is a sleep. A part of me is asleep that does not know that. So when I say putting his foot on my neck, it is that stringency of growth. Like I mentioned the other day, growth in the human world always takes place with friction. It's like a tooth pushing up. Hurts, brings heat. It hurts for 2 or 3 days and then it quits. So likewise, in my expanding process, there is heat and friction. Why? Because it's in the 3D world. Because it's a product of mind. Is that clear? So that isn't God putting his foot on my neck. That's the way it feels to me.
The scripting within us, the erroneous or the errant scripting within us, at some point creates this needle or this foot on your neck, however you want to best explain it. Obviously, it's not a foot such as my foot or your foot,
Right.
but rather a difficulty, and which would be a corrective action, really.
Not necessarily a
Well,
corrective
if you're on the
action.
path, it would be.
Not
You
necessarily.
recognize it, wouldn't it?
Oh, if it's overcome,
Yeah.
it would be.
If
But
it's
how many of
recognized for what it is, and then you attempt to overcome it,
you see, even that language isn't correct.
Isn't correct.
We use it, but it isn't correct. Because the only, you see, that would be like saying to the oak tree, when it's only this tall, and draws wrong conclusions about its life because somebody carves its initials in its bark. Oh no, I'm hurt. There isn't anything to be overcome. Do you see? So it isn't given to us to overcome. It is that at this point in time, I am still ignorant of where I'm going. So that it isn't a punishment fastened on us. It's intrinsic in the fact that I am not awake enough to recognize the nature of the challenge that I'm up against. The challenge for the oak tree being, I'm not yet big enough to give this kid a swat when he wants to carve in my bark. You follow me? So that I want to get away from the idea of punishment. There's any punishment to it. And it is not put there for our overcoming. That's a punishment. There isn't any punishment at all. The only reason the whole problem, unquote, is there is because I am in an event that I don't have the wisdom to deal with. See that? And that's what I'm trying to do, is clean up your language, because I don't want you to start to believe that there's a punishing and rewarding God, because there isn't any such thing.
I want you thinking of it in that regard.
Okay, that's good.
Rather, the scripting.
Yeah.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Does that mean that the I am is unfolding within you?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's,
And
we
couldn't
don't
be
understand
anything else.
We don't understand it. It causes pain.
Right. Because, well, okay, based on our law, as God gave it to me, form was always born in the sleeping state. What is it that is suffering?
The sleeping state.
The unawake
The
form.
unawake.
It's not the I am that's unfolding itself. It's the unawake form that thinks there's something to suffer from, or thinks that it is suffering. It is not suffering, because when we're fully awake, all we find out is we never left the Father's house. We've been dreaming. Any
The
other?
foot on the neck is almost like part of the awakening,
Exactly.
because there's something thrusting itself into manifestation, and there's this dream state that thinks it wants to be doing something else, and part of it is awakened, but it's not fully awakened,
Right.
and the drama and the
That's right.
quote-unquote pain is
Yeah.
that it's still trying to go in its dream state,
There.
and the awakening
That's
state
right.
is going where it's supposed to be going.
That's right.
And that causes the friction.
That's right.
Until
Causes the
and when
friction.
the logical extrapolation of that is when you're fully awake, there's no pain because
Right.
there's no resistance.
Right. But think of yourself in the midst of a nightmare.
And you're awakening from the
you'll
nightmare.
You'll be writhing around in the bed, your heart will be pounding, your hands are filled with sweat, you'll be yelling and trying to get out, and all the time there's nothing there. You see? So it's only because of the dream state that we have this struggle. Because the reality is I'm lying quietly in my bed. But it actually, my belief in the dream can have an effect on my body.
Sure. Yeah.
It can make me yell and scream and struggle and pant. And I can wake up with that with me, sticking to me so grimly that the effect of it lasts for hours afterward, even though I'm theoretically awake. So it's just a question of I am in a deeper dream than I am when I'm waking. I'm sure you all know the wonderful Chinese story about, am I a butterfly dreaming I'm a man, or a man dreaming I'm a butterfly? I don't know which one of them was having the dream. But they caught the idea about that everything is the dream. So we have dreams apparently within dreams within dreams. And then there's another thing that I can't fully explain. In fact, I can't explain it at all. And that is, if that be so, we also can be spiritually taught in a dream. So that there's much to understand about the dream state that we don't understand, or at least I don't understand. Because I can both be terrified and made to be frightened, and as the case of my Dracula, meet a problem as if I had to meet it with my physical body wide awake and going, and have the reaction and the result from that be that my fear left me forever, and I've never had that emotion since. So there was an unbelievable healing, all taking place in a dream, or a nightmare, really. So there's more to that than meets the eye, but I cannot fully explain that. I only know that a dream state can have an effect on us, apparently for good or evil. You wrestle with that, and if you come up with a good answer. All right.
You're somehow almost saying that a dream is not a dream.
Well, no, I am forced to accept the fact that it's all a dream. In other words, the truth is, I never had a fear. I never was in danger of a fear. And I was released from the fear, all in the dream. In other words, the healing also took place in the dream. And that bears a little thinking, a little meditating on, because I know that both things can happen. I don't have a full explanation for it, but I know it can happen. So that in effect, it is as possible to receive good in a dream as evil in a dream, but what we can't lose sight of is that both of them are in the dream. You're going to hear a tape tomorrow that I think will explain that a little more succinctly, so I'm not going to go into it too much. But a dream can almost be, in my case, a blessing, you see. That I was presented with a challenge that I'm glad I didn't have to go through in my physical state, but got the same result as if I had, i.e. a total and complete healing from fear. So there's still a mystery about it. But I'm giving you facts and experience. So I know that can happen. And so if it can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. In other words, we don't always have to go through all our terrible karmic dreams, the terrible karmic experiences. We can be presented with a challenge in a dream and solve it in a dream, and then it's just as solved as if we were quote-unquote awake, you know. In fact, it's a lot easier that way. Not easier. Not easier. I had to draw the same conclusion and stand fast in the same way in that dream as if I had been actually facing a Dracula figure awake. So that it's the activity goes on just as if it were wide awake. If you get to the right answer and the right response, it is the same. Now, how you get those dreams, that's another mystery. I don't know why I had that dream. I don't know why it was my time to meet that challenge. I don't know any of those things. I don't know how God lays his cards out, and which one comes up to be handled today. But I know that there is a sequence in spiritual growth. I call them milestones. And that in my experience, the milestones are the same for all. You have to pass this milestone, then there's another milestone that everybody has to pass. That means you have to deal with that challenge. And then there's another milestone. And they are progressive. For instance, there is a milestone called I have to face my aloneness. And everybody has it to meet someday. And it's a hard one for human beings, because that's one of the scariest things in the world to a human being, is to be alone. And because it brings up abandonment feelings and all the things that babies go through in the human world. So it's a hard one, but it's one that has to be passed by everybody. And when it is passed, you will have gone through a spiritual experience that will move you light years closer to your own reality. So I just tell you that in case you have it to meet or have met it, that's a big one. That's a gold ring, and it adds to your treasure box when you face that one. It's not easy. Any other
What is the
questions?
next one?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
I was working with your chart, and I just would like a little clarification. In terms of the vibrations that
Yes.
come down, there's the spiritual world, and I could fit that in at the top. Then there's the cosmic world, and I put that in the soul area, the creativity.
Well,
I just would like clarification. How does
well,
the vibration?
but I think you're mixing apples and oranges.
Well, that's what I'd like
Yes.
to, if there's any relationship.
Because in dealing with that subject had to do, in my book, with talking about planes of existence where we live. And that has to do with where we live rather than who and what we are, although obviously that's the same thing. But I was explaining it with that, the planes of existence. And again, using Dante as an example, that he has the inferno as the lowest place where we can be. And in my explanation, that would be a very low, slow plane of existence in which all manner of monstrosities could occur and do in the human world. Now, naturally, we're talking about human experience, not talking about anything else. Because if you are if you're in the fourth dimension, you're in all the real dimensions at the same time. So I'm talking about the climb up the spiral road in human terms. So if we are living at that lowest rate of vibration, that is where we can murder and be murdered. We can put people in ovens and be put in ovens. Things of that nature can and do exist at that plane of human existence, and we will suffer it. Now, when something within us moves us, raises our rate of vibration a little bit, and we move into another plane of existence, we can then never get burned in an oven and never burn anybody in an oven. Maybe we never get murdered and we don't murder anybody. But those still in the lower plane will continue to live in that plane. And then we get a little higher, and maybe we have only psychological problems to solve. And as we raise, we get to another. Then we get to the top of the humanhood, which, what would that be? probably
A John the Baptist type.
yeah, somebody who has a glimpse of reality and yet can't live in it. See, because John the Baptist couldn't get into reality. He stayed human, but he had a glimpse of it. So that would be maybe the highest human, purely human plane of existence. Although look what happened to him. Somebody cut off his head. So it's not easy to explain that, except in terms of changing rates of vibration. Now, when you take a Wagner, for instance, who very obviously was living at the cosmic level, because the cosmic level is where what we call human creativity. In other words, my muse lives at the cosmic level, and I can tap into that, and I get my artistic inspiration from that, and man becomes what the world calls a creator. We're not. It's because we're in touch with the cosmic consciousness. That's where human creativity comes from. Not necessarily only a painter or a poet, but an architect, or a great architect. I'm trying to think of the name of the architect who built the dome on the Vatican. Starts with a B.
Bernini, I mean.
Oh, it wasn't Bernini, no.
Borromini.
No.
It was Bernini who finished it.
Excuse me?
It was Bernini who finished it.
But he wasn't the one who proved to the Pope that he could do it.
No.
And Baleski. And he proved in a very cute way, I'll diverge. The idea was that you couldn't support a dome, and therefore it couldn't be built. And they never had before. Brunelleschi, that's it. So he came in and asked the other architects to stand up an egg. And of course nobody could do it. And so Brunelleschi took the egg and cracked the bottom, and it stood up. He said, all you have to do is know how. I can do it. And he did it. So he was in touch with something smarter than himself, do you see?
That would be cosmic consciousness.
Now, however, there's above that
The spiritual plane of existence.
evidenced by Jesus.
This is Joel, but look what happened to Jesus. Hung on the cross.
So, and there's more to that than meets the eye. Maybe I can get into it.
We must change our rate of vibration in order to rise to these higher levels. Now, there's something Joel was talking to me about, which is interesting. He said he's many, many times seen people hit the
Spiritual level in the infinite way,
and then find out that they could write or paint
or sing, or act, or something that they had not even
considered doing before. Well, the reason was they had gone through cosmic consciousness. In order to get where they were, they may not have rested there, but they went through there.
and they couldn't go through.
Through that level of consciousness without being blessed by it. Does that help explain? Now, but if you want to still talk about apples and oranges, then that's okay, I will do that.
Or did that fully answer your question?
Yeah, Mike.
The question was, do we, in terms of, that it does not relate to their chart. Not to this chart. With that, the basic part, they fit together, and I was, when they fit together in this way, that
When mind
creates the
10,000 things,
it also does it by means of lowering its rate of vibration. So at the bottom, there would be, for example, a rock. But
between
mind, pure, and the rock, there will be every gradation of rate of vibration in between.
i.e., at one
one rate of vibration of
plants, at one rate of vibration, water,
one rate of vibration of man, etc., etc.
etc. So
So that this is
the breathing out,
then when the
breathing in starts
that man can begin very low
low to the bottom. And then as he
starts back
as he finds he's
with the pigs and decides to go back to his father's house, all through the human world, which if I were to put that on the chart, it would just be a big thing like this, with man asleep, totally asleep here, and then little by little waking up, and every time he wakes up a little more, he changes his rate of vibration. So that here are the planes of existence
a man to live in, do you see? And as he gets
goes up to here. Now when you get to where he's
fully awake in mind, then he can begin to be fully awake in I am, and he continues
to be more awake and more awake and more awake, and finally he is
aware
of nameless. And then he can
if he wants to.
enter nirvana, the no thingness. Did that help that? Yeah, I didn't make the whole of the 3D world because there's an infinite number of planes of existence. You can walk down the street in New York, and there would be 30 people
Living in
30 different worlds. You see? So you don't go any place to change the world. You don't go any place to change the world. You change our awareness. And that puts us in a different plane of existence. Huh? And in that world, your living is okay. And you have the different planes of existence, the vibration, different.
It's all rates of changing rates of vibration, both going.
Out and coming back. Yes.
You can help me with this. I wondered about a student with who meditated a long time. He started evidently changing her rates of vibration, got to it, couldn't even go out to the market or anything, and she just went out and different and got very frightened at what was happening.
Do you think that increased spiritual consciousness could ever bring fear to anybody?
No.
So what was going on, Elsie?
I don't.
She was kidding herself. She was shocking herself.
One time, I mean,
She wasn't really meditating. I know a lot of people who get silent and think they're meditating, and they are not. They're just being silent. And that doesn't change anything, except to let one fool himself, and then sooner or later, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and by what happens in the life, you know. And now, though, we do have to take a look at this other. John, having his head locked off. Jesus, hanging on a cross. How come? Yes, that we've already seen. But
Your pick.
Joe also said, Barbara, that you have to improve your humanhood in order to get out of it.
You have to what?
You have to improve your humanhood in order to leave it.
That's
direct
what
quote.
my teacher said. Now, I've been asked a lot, is all this suffering necessary? Is all this study necessary? And my answer to that is absolutely not. We do suffer. But I remember when I was in my worst suffering, it's in the book, when I thought I was a wounded wolf. And I said to everybody, go away and leave me alone. I want to lick my wounds. And they all left me, and within 10 minutes the voice said to me, there's no excuse for suffering. It was a shock. But I saw what he meant, and he was right. There's a reason for suffering, but there's no excuse for it. We don't have to suffer. But what is the price of not suffering? The price is death. The price is total surrender of your life to the grace of God and let God run every aspect of your life. And certainly He is going to bring you into suffering. Or it is going to bring you into suffering.
What did Joel mean by that statement? It can be taken so many ways.
What statement?
You have to improve your
No,
human in order to
no.
leave it.
You see how language screws us up. I did not say that.
No, Joel said it.
No,
not you.
he did not say
Read it.
that. No. He did not say you have to improve your humanhood. He did not say that. What he said is, in spiritual development, the longest stage is the second stage of the gradual improvement of your humanhood. He didn't say it had to be. He just said it is. And so it is. And so it is in the experience of everybody I've ever known. It takes the most time to be willing to let go of your error in your humanhood. It took us 30 years, 28 years, working recognition all the time to perfect recognition to where we could deal with error. You see, the human being can't deal with error. It doesn't know the nature of error. It doesn't know its smell, its size, its methods, its function. It has no idea how error works in the world. The human being is no match for the devil, in short. And so it takes a long time to become a match for the devil. And if you don't, you'll never get out of your humanhood because he governs it. Is that clear? Joel didn't say you had to. And there's no have or should in the infinite way. It's just the way it is. Right? We don't have to marry our needles, but we do. Or we give birth to them. But there's no have about that. It's because we are ignorant that we make ignorant choices and draw ignorant conclusions. And that's the cause of the trouble. In short, we run and leap gladly into error. And that's where the problem is.
You know, I've made a rather bad mistake in that I had been studying assiduously the nature of God, and it isn't until I delved into your book when you reversed the order and said, if you know the nature of error, the nature of God
Takes care of itself.
Yes.
But I didn't reverse the order.
Well, to me, it was a reversal
first
of
in
the
the
order
book.
that I had.
God is
started.
first. First thing in Royal Road is the nature of God, followed by the nature of error. No, followed by the nature of man.
I'm talking about your second book.
Well, I don't deal with that in the second book in the same way I did in the first book.
Oh, no.
I present first the nature of God. And then I present in Royal Road, which is the first textbook,
Yeah.
laying the foundation with the nature of man, the nature of error, the nature of prayer, nature of the Holy Spirit, all those foundations that everybody must understand thoroughly before they can go on. No, it isn't to reverse the order, and certainly not order of importance, to say that unless you know the nature of error, you can't make it. But you can't make it without knowing why. Devil's a tough adversary. If you don't know how to recognize it, it has power. This letter that I told you about was in August 1963. Also in August 1963, Joel in his Honolulu talk, said, as to the nature of error, I have taught it incorrectly. I have taught that there isn't any. Whereas, in the 3D world, or he may have said human world, it's all the power there is. He was acknowledging the master statement, here is the prince of this world.
His first hypothesis, I think, came from Christian Science, and that there is no error, didn't it?
His first what?
The first hypothesis, if you will, that there is no error. Isn't that in Christian Science?
Sure, it's Christian Science. And it took him a long time to get over it.
To realize it, recognize it.
He also said, told me once, if I ever reprint the first book of the letters, I'm going to change all the language in it. He said, there's too much Christian Science in it. which was the first book that he published, actually. It wasn't Infinite Way, it was the letters. All right, any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, maybe you can help me with this. Has been burning. I don't know quite how to word it without a picture. When are we lifting ourselves out of a human belief, and when are we standing on this must be where God wants me right now? Okay, an example. Say you want to...
I got to clean up your language, Dulce.
Okay.
God wants you perfect and free. If you want to talk about what God wants,
well,
what you really mean is, this is where I am. This is where I have brought myself.
Right.
And therefore, this is who I am, where I am, and what I do. Okay. This is where I am. It's not a question of God wanting us. It's a question of infinite love. Says unfoldment is okay at whatever stage you meet it.
Right.
You know, the parable of the acorn. He says approved where you are.
Okay.
It's for you to decide if it's a comfortable place or a not comfortable place, and therefore I want to be someplace else.
Right. Well, I'm not sure which principle.
Doesn't have anything to do with God.
To stand on. Okay.
It doesn't have anything to do with God. You are where you are who you are what you are at your present state of development, and the only word God has for that is approved.
Right. Okay.
In other words, he says you're fine where you are.
So
you might not think so.
Right. Okay, but all right, logistically speaking, say you're in a real estate situation where the world belief is, oh, this isn't selling right now. Okay, am I going into and it's not selling, but yet I've been standing on, of course, if God, wherever God will want me, that's where I'll end up. I know it could sell like that if my
spiritual error.
Okay, well, I need to see the spiritual error because I'm not sure which to stand on, that I'm buying a belief system or that I'm not listening to where God wants me.
What makes you think that God has any want at all about vis-a-vis your real estate situation?
People tell me, even teachers have told me, that's right where he wants.
That's the kiss of death.
Okay, I have an infinite way teacher said,
well,
that's where he wants.
Go to your own within for the right answer to that. Go to what you already know for the answer to
and asking the light, and nothing has happened. That's the thing.
Yeah, but you see, you're telling me that you've decided that what is the right solution.
Well, no, I really haven't, because I've been like, that's why.
Yeah, I think you have, because you were deciding that not selling is a wrong thing.
That's what I'm asking. Is it not selling because I'm under some hypnotic force, or is it not selling because that's where I'm to be?
There's nothing that can happen to me that is not an outpicturing of my own state of consciousness. Wherever you are, whatever you are, whoever you are, is an outpicturing of your present state of awareness. All of it. And the error is in worrying about it.
Well, we did drop all concern for several months, and nothing. We did. I did. Totally forgot it. And then all of a sudden woke up one day and said, my God, I'm still here. Nothing's changed, and I'm still here.
And the devil still got you.
Well, okay. So, could you give me something to... What do I stand on? I mean, like a sentence. Like a flashcard. I want a flashcard.
I'll give you one.
I know what it is.
What is it?
Drop all concern and trust the Christ.
Well, it has to be trust the Christ.
Right.
But above all, it has to be wait on the Lord, because that's the only rule for action.
Okay, good. I want to make sure that's what I'm doing, the right action.
That's the only right action. According to what we have been taught, if you have a decision to make and you're at a crossroads, you respond when asked, and nobody's asked you to sell your house.
Right.
So you're on the wait on the Lord.
But it's not like the headache thing. Oh, gee, I think I need to go have lunch with this person, so I need to ask to get it lifted. That's
where Joel was.
Right.
He wasn't a practitioner himself in those days. He was calling a practitioner to help his headache.
So waiting
He's a
on
good
the
Christian Scientist, so he didn't take an aspirin.
Okay, so waiting on the Lord is what I'm doing, and that's right. That's what I should be doing. Waiting on the Lord.
Let me put it this way. I don't give him an advice, but I have no other advice to give you.
Thank you. That helped. I got comforted.
No, what I want you to see that maybe you haven't seen is what happened yesterday. He is not going to, don't look to God for that solution.
Right.
Look to God to enlighten your mind, because it is the mind that is creating this circumstance. Okay. And therefore that's where it has to be changed, if it is to be changed.
Right.
See? God isn't going to change anything. All he can give you is himself.
If it is.
And that will enlighten your mind. Therefore, you can create better circumstances for yourself if you want to. And yet, that would mean if you decided you're going to get enlightened mind, and then you go into mental manipulation to sell your house, you're back in the 3D world.
No, I've not
that
been
is
able
not a spiritual activity.
I've not been able to do that at all.
Yeah. It'll fail for you.
And so
I know.
we're just still in a difficult situation.
Right. We get to a point where the mind won't manipulate for us anymore. It doesn't work. Somebody else. Yes.
Yeah, I had a question about the only commandment that God gave us, and using that while you are raising kids. And when it comes a time for when you may feel like you should punish them for something they did wrong, and then at the same time you're not supposed to see no good, no evil, anything, but you're going to make an action of correction.
Well, Wayne, the fact is, you should eliminate the word punishment from your vocabulary.
Okay.
And never even think in those terms. Because while they're little, you are the gardener. And it's up to you to nourish, and if it's a weak limb, to tie it to a stronger stick. You follow me? In the metaphor. I'm sorry I said that. In other words, they must be corrected. Joel says we have to be correctable. And he's talking about students with a teacher. We have to be correctable. A parent and child relationship is, by definition, a teacher-child relationship. A parent must be a teacher, not a punisher. So that there are other ways of dealing. Number one, to sit down and decide why the kid is doing what he's doing. And when you understand that, you'll know how to deal with it. And if it's just wild horse behavior, like the colts in the field, it's never had a bridle on it, then it has to be bridled. But the way that I went about it was simply to point out that there are rules to living in the world. There are disciplines to living in the world that we are all subject to, that nobody is allowed to just run wild and live his world the way he wants to, because in so doing he's going to violate other person's rights, and then you're at war. And even when they were little, I would talk to them like that. Children are more intelligent than one thinks. But try to, first of all, sit down and see if you can figure out why the behavior is taking place. When you have that answer, you will know what to do about it. And I've had a few kids myself, so if you have a specific situation, give me a call or write me, and I will help you. Or Alexander has started the Renaissance World Mommies Club.
Or Daddy's Club.
And Daddy's Club. And she's dealing with a youngster now and has a lot of principles, so you can get help from her as well. In fact, she probably will write a book at some point about child rearing, because there is an infinite way of doing it, and it doesn't include punishment. It does include restraint. You see the difference?
No, not really.
Well, in the same way, if you saw your kid about to leap off a cliff, it wouldn't occur to you to punish him, would it?
No.
But would you restrain him?
Yeah.
Yeah. physically if necessary. I mean, I give you a concrete example of a child in a restaurant that's misbehaving and climbing on the back of the seats and so on. You pick him up and put him where he needs to be. That's not a punishment. That's a restraint. You see the difference?
Yeah.
So, believe me, it's a complicated thing bringing up children. It is not easy. And therefore, you may have dozens of times when you'll be in doubt about whether you're doing the right thing. And let us help you if we can. Okay? Anybody else?
When you're dealing with an older person, as I am, elderly aunts, and you seek to understand why this behavior is taking place, I got the answer very, very quickly. It was an appeal for more and more love. But what I found was that what my aunt has been doing, her bizarre behavior has been creating negative behavior on the part of other people, but negative behavior is okay if she feels she's not getting enough positive behavior. And
but why is that? Why does that have anything to do with you?
Because I love her and I'm trying to help her in a very difficult situation. She's in a
No,
nursing
but you're
home.
judging her. You see, you're thinking she ought to be different. Now, what you have the right to do is to see that she doesn't violate your life.
That I've been able to
We
do.
never have to allow people to violate our territory, our boundaries. We are privileged to set up boundaries beyond which people may not go. And you just quietly and calmly say, sorry, no, not there. But don't expect her to be different. You're in judgment if you do, and that will rebound to your
No, I know
discredit.
that we can't change people. We can only change ourselves.
Right.
And then concluded that this is where, obviously, all of the work has to be done.
You don't have to help her. You
No,
don't
I
have
know
to help
that,
her.
I
You're
know
not her
that,
teacher. You're not her God. You're not her therapist. You're
Just
not
that she's
any
so
of those
miserable
things.
that, I was trying, and then I realized.
Don't try.
I can't
That's
do it
do-gooding.
anymore.
Unless she specifically asks you for help. And then if she asks you what time it is, don't tell her how to make a watch.
No.
Just answer what was asked.
I love that one.
Okay? Finished?